Hey all, this is Ron K. Armstrong, filmmaker, and in this video, which I've titled "How to Make Great Movies," I want to talk a little bit about how we can break with the norm and the traditional way that Hollywood is making films, and really create something that's revolutionary and groundbreaking. So let me get a little bit into this, but before I do, I guess you guys can see this chain I have around my neck. This is a badge. I've always wanted this, and I got this not too long ago. This is from the movie Outland with Sean Connery. I love this film because it has some great cinematography, but the story is a little slow. So anyway, years ago, growing up, I used to love watching spaghetti westerns. I loved it. The downside to watching those movies of the 40s, 50s, and early 60s is that they present a way of life that is not factually accurate, meaning you always think that the hero, because he's morally right, is going to win, and that he's going to ride off into the sunset. He gets the woman, he defeats the bad guy, and it's all over. He lives happily ever after. But this is a fallacy, and this is not true. And we become programmed due to the Hollywood propaganda machine. I've always said that Hollywood is a propaganda mechanism, that we start to think that because we're on the moral high ground that everything will work our way. Sorry to tell you that the evil people, the oligarchy, the ruling elite have won. They control the planet. And in many, many, many cases, good people have not rode off into the sunset and lived happily ever after. This is the fallacy that we live under, that, doing good gets good in return. It doesn't work that way, and I can go into that for many reasons, but the fact of the matter is we have to start to understand that. And this comes from what I would say a shift in thinking. During antiquity, we would think outside. We would think basically outside the box, but primarily we'd be right brain thinkers. Right brain is nonlinear. It's creative. That's where the seat of creativity lives, and that's where morality is. Left brain is very analytical. It's segregative. It's linear. So what you see in Western society is you see the predominance of left brain thinking. So again, left brain thinks in terms of structure, paradigms, linear. It seeks to get into verbal discourse, name things, labels them, define them, and it's where we see a lot of the cleverness of individuals come out of is through the left brain. In fact, Western society elevates cleverness. It makes you think that cleverness equates with morality, and it doesn't. All right, and there is an absence of nonlinear storytelling. And you'll see that the most recent film, Deadpool, which did really well for an R-rated film, made use of nonlinear storytelling devices, and it was very, very successful. And we need to see more films like that, because the world is caught up in left brain thinking, which is causing a bit of a problem. And this is how the Hollywood programming system works, is because when you think out of the left brain, you can only think based on paradigms. You're not creatively thinking, meaning you can't come up with solutions to problems at the spur of the moment, because you're forever looking for the paradigm, the precedent, and there may not be one. So we need to start as filmmakers and screenwriters thinking about, how we can tell our stories in a very different way that exposes the truth of what life really is about. You're not going to win every battle. The good guy doesn't get the girl all the time. One of the things I used to love was Bruce Willis films, but the fact of the matter is Bruce Willis attacked things from a one-to-one correlation, meaning villain, robbed bank, had guns, took hostages. Bruce Willis got bigger guns, got an army to deal with the bad guy. Well, those things are spawned again from the left brain that can only see the relationship between one-to-one things. It doesn't understand that you can go about solving problems in a roundabout way that are indirect, and we need to start incorporating these ideas into our films, into our stories, so that the people out there, the public, the audience is coming to see our films, can reach an epiphany, can start to grow mentally, spiritually, and understand that there is more than just the traditional beginning, middle, and end, and boy meets girl, boy gets girl, and that's the end of the story. There needs to be a breaking of the template. Hollywood right now is caught up in just making films based on previous box office successes, and they're very known for doing this. It's because they're risk adverse. They don't want to take risks. But more importantly, the people who they create in their ecosystem or their culture is people who are very, very left brain in terms of how they think. We have not explored right brain thinking, nor have we explored integrated or whole brain thinking in terms of how we communicate our stories and stuff. And this is why, if you look back at all of the well-known filmmakers of yesteryear, when you look at Kubrick, when you look at like, for example, Coppola, and you look at all of these filmmakers, you'll see that the one thing they had in common, and I think Hitchcock is a perfect example of this, is that they didn't rely on the traditional way to tell a story. They broke the mold. They looked at things differently. Look at, for example, filmmakers, like let's take Citizen Kane for example. Orson Welles did an awesome job. Everything about that film shows you that there was an ability to take a risk, to look at things differently, and to break the mold. That's what we need in today's world. Unfortunately, you're not going to get that looking at Hollywood films because they're all set according to a certain standard. And Hollywood also operates out of a code. They have certain things that they want because it communicates a message, and it also instills the programming. They have an agenda in terms of the way they want the world culturally to think, and they're putting that forth. And you have to counteract that by saying, you know what, there is an alternative perspective, and that perspective needs to shine. It needs to get out there so that we can see different sides of a story, different sides of the same coin. You know what I mean? I mean, when I was watching the spaghetti westerns, the one thing that I really was interested in is the fact that how they portrayed the Native Americans. They were always these people who were the aggressors. They were evil. They're going around scalping the cowboys. But never did we understand it from the perspective that their land was stolen, and they were fighting to defend their land, their culture, their way of life. But we never got a glimpse into that and understood their side of the story. And when we did, it was always through a proxy, a white character who was seen as not racist, who was very empathetic toward the Native Americans. But we never understood them from a very deep cultural perspective. We never got that glimpse. So what I want to say to you is, if you want to tell great stories, we have to depart from the Hollywood traditional templates, because that template is not working and is not giving us a true image of what life is about. The good guys, I'm sorry, do not always win, but there always is a lesson to learn. We can grow from an experience, even though the experience may be tragic and it may be where we don't get out of it alive, but there is something to learn from it and to experience from it. And by us watching these characters and their suffering and what they're going through, we enrich our lives and we grow as spiritual beings, as human beings. But the fact of the matter is that Hollywood is caught up in the flesh, the understanding that, the fourth dimension of solid objects is all there is. There's nothing spiritual, there's nothing beyond that. We haven't addressed those things. And Hollywood is also caught up on fear-based mechanism. They want to instill fear within the general public, fear of ghosts, fear of foreigners, fear of your mate, fear of diseases. That's what is the catalyst for most of their films. But if you understand that the great films, the more deeply elevating films to your spirit, are the films that portray things in a very complex array. A villain is only a villain because they perceive what they're doing is right, or they operate based on selfish needs that have been instilled into them from how society has brought them up, or how their culture or family have brought them up. And if you seek to understand that, then you say, how can we deal with these societal ills so that we do not create these antagonists, do not create these villains, But we never gauge that, because the left brain only understands polarization. It only understands that either you're good or you're bad, and there's no in between. There's no backstory. There's no understanding. And don't get me wrong. There's a lot of filmmakers out there who have come out and made a lot of complexity to their stories and characters to give us a greater understanding of life. But those filmmakers are few and far between. And Hollywood doesn't seem to want to promote those filmmakers a lot. Instead, they stand on the peripheral, and every now and then they produce some great work that stands out, and then they go back into obscurity. So we need to start working with those filmmakers, developing our own self as filmmakers, our craft, to go beyond what we traditionally see out there. And I really want you guys, as artists, as filmmakers, to start thinking about this and go beyond, take that leap. We have to start doing things different because as a filmmaker, like it or not, you make an impression upon society, and it is a lasting impression. Look at George Lucas. That film, Star Wars has become a global phenomenon. I mean, it's just awesome of what he has done. And to produce something on that caliber shows you how the medium of film, how influential it can be if done in the right way. So think about what I've said here about understanding how the left brain, right brain, integrated brain thinking works, because all of that translates into how you tell a story, what your view on the world is. And unfortunately, again, like I said, when you're looking at things primarily from the left brain, you have a very limited perspective on life. In fact, the left brain is kind of what I say is like when you're a hammer, all you see are nails. And that's what the left brain is doing. All it sees is good guy, bad guy. That's it. Right off to the sunset. Live happily ever after. But it doesn't say, oh, character is going to go suffering for a long period of time, but will grow from that suffering and will help others in the process. And part of that is because, the American public is conditioned to want to escape things, and they don't want to, they don't want something that's maybe the harsh truth of the matter, because we are caught up in a fantasy, a Maya, an illusion to think that life is about one way, and then when you experience life and you go through it and you realize that these movies have lied to you, you know what I mean? And that's a rude awakening, and not many people are ready for that. That's when you get taken out of the matrix, and you either become, Neo, or you become part of the matrix. So I think I've given you enough food for thought, and so think about that. Become a great filmmaker. Don't be a good filmmaker. Become a great filmmaker. Understand how to tell a story. Take your audience on a journey that's not the traditional nonsense that Hollywood puts out every freaking year. It is just ridiculous. So anyway, I hope this has helped. Go out there, kick butt, be great. And this is Ron K. Armstrong, a filmmaker extraordinaire, and that's all for now.